For the sake of this, we can call me Alex. That should hopefully make it a lot easier.
Oh my gosh, I just realized I was muted. Hello. All right, now everyone can hear me. Sorry. Okay, I'm joined today by Alex to talk about the Trivers-Willard Hypothesis. I think we were originally going to talk about something else, but I got so one-track minded on something I thought it was this instead. But I did want to talk about this uh, in general because I just released a 2-hour-long video on it that is very... it didn't do as great as I was hoping. And so I thought maybe one of the things that I could do, because I think the information in it is very, it might pick up at some point, because the information is very interesting and very disturbing, that it would be fun to do just a stream about it and talk about things. Yeah, I'm trying to fix the volume, guys. Like I said, I haven't done it in a while. And just talk about this Trivers-Willard hypothesis, what it means, and particularly how it relates to mass migration, which of course is a big topic here. I don't technically live in the UK, I live in the Channel Islands, but close enough. But you do. So unfortunately have to experience a lot of the effects of mass migration on a regular basis. I would assume, to some degree. I don't know how bad it is where you live.
It's slowly starting to creep in. That's a certainty.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I'd kind of look back to my childhood and go, oh yeah, that was like, you'd go around your town and you'd rarely ever see anyone that was from outside of town. To put it in perspective, we thought of people from down south in London as being foreigners. There's still a little bit of that mentality within
Yeah.
me, but it's kind of disappeared a bit now.
Yeah. I mean, I've certainly seen it. It's not so bad here in Guernsey. I mean, there is a certain extent of it, but it's citizenship here. Like, it's pretty much I can never become a citizen, no matter what. There's just no pathway for that, which is quite based. But so the problems here are less pernicious. But I go to the mainland quite frequently, and it is stark. Specifically, if you're anywhere near London, that is particularly telling of how much of the replacement has occurred. And a lot of times, and not a lot of time, it seems that all the time when we talk about migration, not just to the UK but anywhere, the kind of things that people focus on are topics like GDP and number go up on chart, therefore more GDP, more gooder, etc. Essentially.
Mm.
But this Trivers-Willard thing that I found is a way that kind of gets away from that, because that's very easy to manipulate and puts a lot of onus and value on what GDP means. This is something that exists totally outside of that. So hopefully we'll all be able to cover something interesting and novel that a lot of people haven't heard about before, because I've never heard anyone else talk about this in the political sense. I think it's been almost entirely ignored because I don't think there's any reason, it doesn't seem on face value any reason why anyone would look at this. And what it is human sex ratios at birth. So how many boys are born in a society in a given year, let's say, versus how many girls are born. Couple basic things. So I think most people know that there are more boys that are born than girls, but males die more. And that's why. You need more males because males suffer from higher degrees of and risks of mortality in utero than girls do, and then from the moment of birth onwards, either from accidents, from workplace hazards, in war, obviously. Men have it a lot harder in terms of staying alive, so you need to have more men to reach gender parity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're prone to doing silly things, and on top of,
Well,
on
yes,
top of that, from
women as
some
well
reading
too.
I did a while ago, yeah, women as well. From some reading I did a while ago, there was something to do with women in general are slightly better at sort of shrugging off things that would normally do more damage to a man, even things like our immune system.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense why more boys are terminated in utero, because the male body is essentially foreign to the female
Yeah,
body. So the woman's body kind of wants to excise that. It's like a foreign object. I mean, it's always a foreign object, but more foreign genetically. So for that reason, it's at least just from stillbirth, males are 10% more likely to be stillborn than girls are. But that's
yeah,
why even so, despite all the things that affect it before birth, even when birth occurs, the natural ratio for the human species is about 105, or 105 males to every 100 females. What Trivers-Willard hypothesized, one of them is a sociologist, one of them was a computer scientist. In the 1970s, they hypothesized that if this number changes too much, away from 105, it probably indicates that something has happened in a society that has made it so that it is not biologically a reasonable use of resources to produce a male at this moment, because males, more likely than females, just on average, are less likely to reproduce. So you will have far more males who will never be able to reproduce once than you will have a female who will never be able to reproduce once, essentially, just on average. As a result, if resources are scarce and you can only have one child, for example, and that might be very difficult even to do that, then females are prioritized and males are killed in the womb, essentially, because it's deemed as this is too resource taxing for me to gestate a male, when a female would be more likely to reproduce, pass on the genes. That's the goal of life, from a purely biological perspective. So what I came across in the data, and what scared me in them, is that, more than anything, is that because it was the most stark finding, is that in the UK, the sex ratio at birth for white Brits is not only below the average, but it is under 105, which means that it is representing a net drag on the national sex ratio at birth, or SRB is the acronym. And instead, if you look at these data, because they're collected every year, seemingly like no one thinks to not, write down the sex of a baby, well, maybe in more recent years. But it's just all this data that just exists, So you can go and look at it for hundreds of years. And that's what Trivers-Willard did. That's what I did in this video, was for the project, was go back and look at trends over time, and you can find evidence of it. So whenever there's an economic recession or depression, SRB goes down. Whenever there's a war, SRB goes down at first, and then it very much increases as the conflict ends. And there's actually sort of a hypothesis that it increases early on in war as well, as a reaction to that, to produce more males, because a war is going on specifically. Or there's some evidence of that. Interesting. It is. That's why I find all this stuff fascinating, because it isn't touchable by things like GDP or, I don't know, racisms or whatever,
It's a bit of a crazy one, because like GDP is just a number on a spreadsheet somewhere. It doesn't really impact. You don't really feel the impacts of the GDP in your daily life. You feel the impacts of what's directly going on around you. Like, I imagine over in Ukraine right now, people aren't sitting worrying about the GDP. They'll be worrying about, is a shell going to land on my house?
Yeah. And the result of that is in Ukraine, for example, the data I saw on it most recently, unsurprisingly, the SRB is very low in Ukraine right now because it's in bad times. And when I came across this hypothesis, I thought of that quote that I see everybody on the sort of like, whatever you want to call it, dissident right or whatever use, which is the hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create bad times. And this is essentially biological scientific evidence for that idiom. Very interestingly. So I was ecstatic to be able to prove with math a commonly touted right-wing sort of phrase.
Yeah, direct source for hard times creating hard men, good times, weak men. That is impressive. It's fascinating that it could actually just sort of spin out that way from all the events that would have a direct biological impact.
Yeah.
Rather than it just sort of being off in the distance, there's fighting going on over there, resources are getting a little bit thin, that your biology can actually directly react to that and be impacted on by that.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of, where it gets even more fascinating, to me at least, is that you can trace this both for big events that go on for years, like COVID, for example. COVID was a little complicated because I'm not sure how afraid people really were of COVID, and a lot of people just stayed at home and did nothing for like 2 years, because in some areas the SRB increased during COVID, and particularly after like the first 6 months when people stopped taking it so seriously. that seems to
Right.
align. But if you have an economic recession that lasts for years, or you have a war that lasts for years, this is kind of stuff that makes more sense. But it also reacts. The SRB also is changed about 6 to 9 months after small, isolated, tragic events. For example, I mentioned before the stream, but 9/11 caused the
Yeah.
SRB of New York State to decline. So people in the state of New York, after 9/11, something about the vibes gave women who were pregnant again, biological calculus is the best way of explaining this. The impression that times were hard, and so it was not an opportune time to have a son because of potentially a lack of resources, that things would be bad in the future and she wouldn't be able to take care of him as much, and therefore his likelihood of passing on his genes is diminished.
I wonder if it's linked to stress hormones, because I imagine that if you're watching something like 9/11 happen, especially if you're directly there,
Right.
it's possibly going to increase the amount of stress hormones running through your body. And if it's at the time when a child's sex is being decided, would that then have an impact on sex of the child, whereby increased stress hormones raises the likelihood of a daughter being born and developing rather than a son?
Yeah, that normally happens. I mean, that's decided, pretty much instantly about what it's going to be, but whether it'll be a male or a female at the moment of conception. But what happens is there's then a lot of really complicated biological processes that occur, particularly very early on, but all throughout pregnancy. And it's why it's not just 9 months after; it's 6 months after a tragic event you see it, because if a woman is pregnant with a son, her body will abort it, like without she
That the
doesn't.
an invention.
Yeah, no,
Which is
no one's responsible for it in any way. It's
yeah.
just a natural process that happens, which is sad and tragic, but it's also an obvious evolutionary mechanism there to try and make sure that people pass on their genes. So you also find it in reaction to it. See if an increase in seasonal pollutants that can change it. A 1 degree colder temperature in Finland results in more boys. So cold weather, which was interesting. I was like, oh, cold winter's hypothesis comes in here as well. Interesting. Wasn't it? Well, yeah, I guess I was expecting to see you here. But all of these things can can affect it in different ways. And again, what I found in the UK, which was the most disconcerting evidence, is that it's. Let me find the graph here, and I'll send it to you, and then I'll post it on stream as well. I just have to find the right one. Is that particularly in the UK, it was lower right here. Yeah. Here's the one with the red, and then I'll put this on screen as well. So this was using 2015 data. Yeah, I'll put it on the top there. And this was the graph that freaked me out. And it's actually funny because I was talking to who was I on with? James Burden. The day that the day I first did this calculation. And I told Burden that I thought that the SRB of white Brits was the same as that of the Congo, and I did some more calculations because I just looked at it that morning, and I thought, oh, that's a very bold statement. I hope that that's correct. And then I did some more calculations. I thought, no, I think I made a mistake. And then I confirmed in some areas of the UK, yes, the white British SRB is lower than that of the Congo.
Interesting. Which area specifically, just out of curiosity?
The Isle of Walney which is the one I looked at because I remembered Callum's video from a couple years ago where he went there because it was supposedly the most ethnically white and British place. It's not the only one, but that whole area tends to be. But the data aren't 100% there because for the whole region, Westmoreland and Furness, there are some areas that have very high immigrant populations, where it's as high as I should say, where the white British population is as low as 70% in a couple of areas there. So that skews the whole region. But I could find it, at least in one sample, from the Isle of Walney. And there's another confounding variable here, which is that higher maternal age decreases it. So older women are less likely to have sons. And that goes up year by year. But again, this was the important one in this graph that I've got on the screen is that the the second bar there, these are representing with 105 being the norm. So like the norm is where you don't see any bars. That's like about the average, where you should expect it. These are lines representing the pushes and drags on it, or the like what's pushing it up, the total number of about 105, and what's dragging it down. And the groups that are dragging it down are Black Africans, white British, and then let's see, what else was it? Black Caribbeans, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, and then I think it was the other black groups. Yeah. So they all represent something is worse for these people than comparatively to other groups that have these higher SRBs, who namely tend to be Indian, Chinese. And then white other, which is actually how they categorize Arabs, to be honest, that they will call them white other in a lot of, at least in particular, I think that's how wait, this wasn't the ONS who did these data, who collected it. I can't think off the top of my head who it was, but I mean, it was the UK government, obviously, and they don't like to, I'm sure if you've looked at any statistical reporting, you've noticed that, or they'll say other Asian or something like that, to sort of avoid being more specific about where the migrants are coming from.
Yes. Yeah, they like to muddy the waters a bit. They don't want to be upfront and honest about things.
No, which made this a difficult calculation. But I'm 100% sure about these. These are just direct reports from the government. I just put it into a graph as well and did the calculations around 105. The other big issue is that Chinese, who are less of a portion of the population, but Indians and a lot of other people who are of the Muslim religion engage in female feticide. So they kill their female daughters. This obviously, or they abort their female daughters, depending on the group in question. But that also further skews things, of course. And the problem with this, like the whole why should we care, is that if you have a whole lot of men who are not at parity to some degree with women, things aren't going to go well. People are going to be unhappy.
Yeah, you're creating a rod for your own back, based in a civilizational structure. The thing that interests me a bit about it is, if you end up with a smaller pool of men, eventually you're probably going to, it's probably going to be a case of quality over quantity to some degree. Mm-hmm. Whereby eventually you may,
That's the hypothesis, is that it's fewer but fitter males, because only the strongest will be able to survive under harsh conditions. So what fitter male necessarily means isn't really fully described in the literature, but and they don't really know, outside of a male who is more likely to reproduce. So Chad, I guess, more Chads in times of strife and adversity is essentially what the hypothesis is. So I guess that's the silver lining on it, is that the men who are born during these times will be stronger for it, but there will be less of them. And there are, demonstrably, via that graph. And it's not the only one, but you can see evidence of it also in the United States, Canada, and Australia. It was only in the UK, though, where I saw that the basal population, the white population, had an SRB that was representing a net drag. And I think the US, Canada, and Australia, and anywhere else in the world, should probably be aware of this, European countries, I mean, because it will happen to you eventually. The UK is always just kind of a decade or two ahead on a lot of this stuff, it seems.
That is interesting. I've heard it discussed before that we're a bit of a testing ground for...
It certainly seems like it.
Yeah.
I mean,
it feels like it.
Well, it's an isolated place where you can test a bunch of the shit you want to do on a mass level all over the world. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It is quite funny because obviously a lot of within Europe it's divided by, going back to the Cold War. We've got the dividing line of the east versus the west of Europe, and I've seen quite a bit of the east of Europe at this point. And it's funny to see. You can almost feel how much better off they are than the west of Europe at this point.
Yeah. which
It's
reversal
tangible.
of what you well,
Yeah.
what I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm 1990, so growing up in the post Cold War, that was the opposite sort of way that I grew up thinking about those things. But clearly, and one of the reasons for that is probably because they're not experiencing this mass migration from people who, for one thing, massively overproduce males, and when there's too many men, then there tends to be more crime. We can find historically in countries where there have been an excess of men, as there were, for example, in China, as a result of the one-child policy. The long-term result of that was consistently higher crime that, if you go look at my whole video, I've got the citations in that, was related explicitly to an excess number of men, because they don't have anything to do in some cases, because they can't find a girl oftentimes, as is the obvious problem in China. And so that leads to discontent. And when you have imported a bunch of people who, let's say, are a little bit lower inhibition, perhaps, than the native population, well, I can't imagine why that wouldn't lead to an even greater excess of crime than it does in the Chinese.
Yeah, you're basically creating a melting pot of angry men that can't find women and have nothing better to do. It's not going to end well. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take a social scientist to come and point that out to you.
Yeah, that part I think is a little bit. They didn't need to have all the maths done for that part to make sense. But they also can't work, or allegedly not. I mean, we all know they work as delivery drivers, but they're not supposed to have jobs. Which even then, okay, so now you have nothing but free time. There's also research that shows that not having a job is related to increased crime. For, again, some obvious reasons. There's the financial reason, sure, but they also get paid stipends by the state. It doesn't matter, though. If people have nothing to do but sit around, and young men in particular have nothing to do but sit around, not work, well, I think it's kind of obvious what they're going to do, and it's crime to a certain extent.
It almost goes to the African proverb, the child that isn't accepted by the village will burn it down.
That's... I think I've heard that somewhere before, or just a long time ago, but I didn't think about that in this context. But that's exactly correct. It's you have these, again, they call them fragile males in the literature, who can't reproduce or would be less likely to reproduce. In this particular condition, situation, they also can't work. So yeah, they're going to go out and do violence.
Yeah, they're not able to be accepted into the wider society. There's no place for them in the wider society. Continue on, and there's not one being created there for them. There's nothing for them to step into. Therefore, they're just going to turn to violence because it's the only thing that if you're just sat doing nothing, it's the only thing you can do. You can just lash out and go, well, they aren't doing anything for me. Hit them.
Right. And then combine that with the predominant religion being Islam.
Yeah.
In which case, it's like, well, if you've violated all of Allah's rules, you can wipe the slate clean and go to heaven by doing a little jihad, essentially. Personal or mass jihad. And this is a commonly held belief, and that's why, I mean, it's been stated with a lot of terrorist attacks that it was from people who were, by their seemingly own admission, overly westernized. And they felt that they were sinning, and so they felt they had to go do something to wipe their slate of their sin. And that is oftentimes extreme violence.
Yeah, that's it. You'd almost feel the clash between... There'd be an internal clash there as well between your sort of westernization and Western upbringing versus your very, very not Western religion.
Right.
And it doesn't surprise me at all there that you would then have conflict come out of that, because you've got internal conflict that is then being externalized because they've found no way to resolve the conflict within themselves.
Yeah. And again, then these men are not... I don't know if this is true or not, or just an internet rumor, but I've often heard Indians say that they are told in India, they hear in India, that white women love Indian men. And if they move to the West, they will be surrounded with Bob and Vagine. Of course, this is not true. And if looking at any polling on it shows that Indian men tend to be amongst the lowest rated in attractiveness by women. of any of any race. They're fairly low down on the totem pole. And so, yeah, you have men who don't have a lot of economic prospects. They're not going to have a lot of romantic prospects. They are excess. And so, yeah, then they've been raised in this society that is, its morals and values are very different from their religious ones. That also puts an additional psychological strain on them. And so it is an inevitability that the mass migration policies, particularly of, the Boris wave, let's say, have been absolutely incalculably disastrous. And unless you basically have to send most of them back. And I would hope that would happen, but I'm highly skeptical that any significant numbers will.
Yeah, I think Boris wave has been an absolute unmitigated catastrophe.
Yeah.
It's to the point where even sort of Labour, although flip-flop a lot, I think they kind of know, like, yeah, no, we can't actually continue on carrying this much, what is effectively dead weight.
Yeah.
They're struggling to find places to stuff them.
And they are stuffing them in everywhere, but they don't work. I mean, they do work. They work for Deliveroo or whatever. And well, of course, they won't work now with digital ID. That'll really stop it, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's gonna fix everything. Just stick a digital system in to fix it. Literally, just another digital crutch.
Yeah, that'll stop the boats.
No.
What boats? Or just boats? Question mark. Sorry, like the hamburgers, meme. It's very much that.
Yeah, yeah. But it is. It seems like the government's every single solution to everything is just, we'll look at you more closely. And that literally seems to be it. Just increase the security state every single turn. And it's...
Yeah.
Ian, as we were discussing just before here, I have a feeling that won't last forever. And when that falls apart, oh boy, is it going to be fun.
Yeah, I certainly hope so, but I'm a bit black-pilled on it. I hope not to be, but I see so little things to be hopeful for.
There's a brilliant book by E.M. Forster.
Yeah.
It was written in 1909. The Machine Stops.
Yes.
You heard of it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's brilliant, but it's a bit of a funny one because you can come to
I've
the
not
end
read
of
it, but I have heard of it. Yeah.
You come to the end of it, and you can either have the black pill, it's all over response, or you can see the I think it's Wagner's painting of the bloke stood on top of a mountain, kind of looking out over the lands, and you're basically kind of the bloke sat in the bus on two sides, where one side's like sitting looking at a mountain, just like absolutely completely depressed, just like, oh, this is the worst thing ever, and then the other guy on the other side looking out over like sunshine, rainbows, and happiness, but they're both on the same bus.
Right. It is a matter of perspective, and a big silver lining on this, and this was only assessed last year. Let me make sure I have the document up so I can find what it is and I don't misspeak on it, although I don't know why. Wait a minute. Why did it not let me Control F RSS? Oh, that's neat. I'm trying to find this, but for some reason Microsoft Word is giving me problems with it. Allele. There's a specific allele, though. Yeah, here it is. That it's only been assessed in a sample of the UK population, and of that only in white British population. And because it was only identified last year. So this research is, and late last year, so it's brand new as research goes. And they identified an allele at chromosome RS144724107 of the ADAMTS14 gene. And this allele was only present in 25% of the white British sample. Well, not white British sample, sorry. Was it UK sample total? Let me double check on this. Was it just in that? No, it was a total UK sample, so yeah, 25%. Well, so, and 25% did have this allele, right? And that's probably a lot of foreigners, would be my guess. But if you have this allele, it results in a 19% reduction in sex odds ratio. So people who have this allele are 19% more likely to have a daughter than a son, but as the result of any pregnancy. My guess, based on, although they did not delineate by ethnic background, but my guess would be that white people probably don't have this allele at high
Yeah.
levels or very commonly. So white Europeans are more predisposed naturalistically and genetically and biologically to have sons. So when you see the SRB like that for white Brits being, again, a net drag on the national SRB, that not only means it's going against, but GDP go up, so SRB should go up because things are getting better. It also means that it's fighting against genetic propensity to overproduce sons. So it's even worse than it looks.
Yeah, so it's literally completely and utterly going against the already present ingrained biology. It's overriding what would feel almost like a literal biological trait, like you say. Just rewiring it to say... I can't help but feel upon hearing that it's something that is actively being done, because you can't mess up society to the point where you accidentally start overwriting biology.
When things are really, really bad, however, again, the SRB drops. So if in the Isle of Walney, for example, has an SRB of 98, that is, again, like the Congo or Afghanistan in 1950. So the relative conditions... Now, there's a ton of other factors, but you could make a very broad statement and say something about the relative conditions of living in the Isle of Walney in 2022. Was the census, was that the last one? Is equivalent to living in the Congo or Afghanistan in 1950. Part of which is 100% white British. Yeah, sorry for the extreme black pill, though, or whatever. Again, depending, I guess, on the way you look at it. The silver lining there is that there is that gene for overproduction of males, which is a good thing. But the problem is that this means it's not just working against, hey, but we live in a modern society with medical miracles and GDP go burr. But despite that, this underlying thermometer that measures the temperature of the health of a society is illustrating that white British people have conditions that are in some way analogous to the Congo or Afghanistan in 1950.
Yeah, that's
I mean, it feels that way. I don't really know how you could compare.
There is something to that. We're continually told, the material benefits of the world. It kind of the thing that always sticks in the back of my mind is back in the 60s you had the Kinks creating all of their music, and a lot of their music, obviously, we kind of look back on it and go, oh, it's so sweet and all of that, it's like they were singing of sort of better times. But then when you really sit down and start to like take it apart a bit, you kind of realize they weren't actually mocking their ancestors, saying like, oh, John's the toilet in the back garden. They were kind of saying, actually, we think we might have lost something here. And you can feel, for all the material progress, there has been something spiritual that has been getting sapped away.
And I think...
especially...
Yeah, I think it's...
Sorry, go on.
I agree. I think it's actually spiritual in a way. Because, again, it's really hard to, like, measure it. But it's a vibe. It's a feeling. It's a sensation of how society is going that in some way leads to this. Because... Again, like with 9/11, people's lives in New York State were not actually at any real significant greater risk. But it didn't matter, because then, of course, it was totally locked down and, the highest, tightest security the U.S. has ever had. But they still felt like their lives were in danger, to the degree to which it affected this biological process.
I think that the key is it's something that we have a problem with, which is we live in the age of mass and scale, of the reign of quantity over quality, and the problems that we're facing are not quantitative problems, they're qualitative problems, and we can't measure them. We seem to have lost the tools to be able to measure them.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I was shocked to find this, because what I would think are devastating, and believe are devastating data, are just sitting there because no one, I guess because no one in the government has thought to hide it yet. essentially. Because it seems like such a benign thing. It's like, well, how many boys were born this year? How could that possibly affect anything? Or what did that possibly mean? And I found it in a very funny way. I was doing another video about this Maltese pediatrician who decided to publish a bunch of Star Trek fan fiction in a medical journal. I don't really know what was going on with him. He had like a mental breakdown and did some really weird stuff. But his main area of research was on this SRB stuff. And he would look at it in all kinds of strange lenses, like, did the death of Elvis Presley change the SRB of the United States? The answer was no to that one. But when I came across his research and I just saw that title of a paper, I mean, it was just stated like that, did the death of Elvis Presley cause a change in the number of boys born? I went, why would you ever ask a question like that? You know, whatever.
Maybe it's... Yeah, maybe he kind of went a bit too deep down his rabbit hole and went, oh...
I think he was gold bricking a bit.
Notice,
like...
it's like, oh, I'm not meant to be saying these things.
I think he was just trying to think of anything that he liked, sort of, or was interested in. I think he likes Elvis, so he was like, was the death of Elvis that devastating? But again, he's not wrong, because winning the Rugby World Cup increased the Japanese SRB. So that is, like, how seemingly minor of a thing that happens in society can have these short-term effects. And then when you've got long-term building of what I call a civilizational anxiety, yeah, it just gets worse.
The Japanese thing, that's even more insane, because that's literally the bread and circuses affecting the crowd.
Yeah.
And increasing the number of males born to the crowd.
Yeah, the bread and circuses...
Just purely by watching the bread and circuses.
Which is astonishing, but yeah, that one in particular, there were... normally it's things like earthquakes, hurricanes and tornadoes, you know, any kind of mass disaster results in a temporary reduction in the SRB, as well as man-made disasters in the case of 9/11. Radiation has a huge effect for kind of obvious reasons. Fetuses are extremely sensitive to radiation. So, of course, that just... And that actually can sometimes result in excess males as well, but that's because you're talking about weird mutational stuff going on there. But any of these things can affect it to greater or lesser degrees, and sometimes it's only in a certain area that's specifically affected by a natural disaster, for example. The areas around them might have absolutely no change in their SRB. But if something bad happens in a place at a time, you can usually check about 6 to 9 months later, go look up how many babies were born in this county this month, and draw that back to whatever happened 6 to 9 months prior, and you can probably expect to see that there will be more girls born than boys, comparatively to the average.
Did you see the thing that Callum posted a little while ago about the resettlement? I think it's resettlement migration. Basically, the migration of white people within the UK.
Oh, no.
Which was basically, there was something, I think it was on Callum's Twitter, I think it was something saying along the lines of, it's the greatest change in the UK population since the Black Death.
I did see that post. Yeah, I did see that actually.
Yeah, that post. If you
it was just about
pull that with what
Secretary.
With this specifically.
Yeah.
Then that's potentially a supporting bit of evidence there for the theory here that it is as bad as.
And that's the raw numbers, wasn't it? Like the raw numbers on it are horrifying, and they're very obvious to see. Like, again, with the Boris wave of, 900,000 this year, 700,000 another year. Those are unbelievable numbers of people that are coming in for a country that's not that big. I mean, compared, like, I think for being in America, and I know that those kinds of numbers on an American scale don't sound as ludicrous, but they are ludicrous. And so this is something that is happening on top of that, or in addition to it, in a way that's silent. And it is very silent because a lot of it, outside of the natural stuff that happens, because moving to better conditions. So if you are living in a real shithole, your SRB is more likely to be diminished because you're living in a shithole. Well, then what happens if you move to a much nicer place? According to this hypothesis, the sex ratio goes up and more boys are born because just by moving, you've improved your conditions, things are more stable. And because it's a
Yeah.
stability hypothesis, that would predict just by the very act of moving to the UK or Australia or Canada or America, these immigrants will have an
Or
increased
even
SRB.
yeah, even internal migration. Because looking back a little bit to my childhood,
Hmm.
a lot of the migration that we had to where I live specifically, it wasn't foreign migration. It was people leaving London. It was the Cockneys leaving London, come and live in my area because looking back now, it seems very obvious their home had been colonized.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
so they've been kicked out, and the material qualities and all of the stressors would have material quality goes down, stresses go up, stability goes down. They left and then looked for stability elsewhere. And my nation, my specific region of the UK is still fairly homogenous white British,
yeah,
or at least it was up until the Boris wave.
right. And that's been, yeah, of course, again, a major contributing factor. But
And it's
it makes sense, though, because for Americans, for example, Americans who move to the UK tend to have a higher SRB, which you would think,
yeah. You
what's
wouldn't think
going
that
on?
would make sense if it's based on GDP.
Which
Is
indicates it's not based on GDP. It's something that's totally something about your life
it's
has
something else.
improved because typically Americans make that choice pretty, concretely that they want to move for some reason. Moved over here because of my husband, who I met online. And so, yeah, conditions for me improved because things in my life improved that were outside of that.
Yeah.
And I imagine that most Americans who choose to move to the UK, that's probably the case. Why something other thing is improving their life. And you also find it the other way around. So again, when you're making that kind of decision for those groups of people, then, and I'd be interested about the local migration because I didn't come across a lot of that, but I was looking at these global trends. So, but I'm sure it does as well.
It'd be very interesting to see the local migration, specifically because not only did you have Londoners leaving sort of their home to come to live in my region is easily one of the least well economically developed regions in the country.
Yeah.
We are notorious for being poor. To put it, I'll give the game away a bit. From the northeast of England.
Yeah.
And we have always we've been hammered for a very, very, very long time.
Yes.
And it's and when I say a long time, I mean it goes all the way back to William the Conqueror.
Right.
Because William the Conqueror came across, and then you actually had the Harrowing of the North, whereby basically he came across and just the North rebelled against him, and he just came in and just massacred everyone.
Yeah.
Like salted the fields.
Yes.
And it took from William the Conqueror up to the 1800s for the region's population to reach where it was before William the Conqueror came in.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, it took 800 years to recover from William the Conqueror. And then by the time that we actually had recovered, you started having the Industrial Revolution. And within the Industrial Revolution, we were actually quite pivotal. We were, for a little while, one of the more wealthy regions of the country, purely because we're brilliant for manufacturing and specifically shipbuilding. Did a lot of shipbuilding.
Yeah.
But through into the 1920s, our shipbuilding began being decommissioned, taken apart. And then by 1940s, it was all gone. And all of the industry had disappeared. And since then, basically nothing's come in to replace it. We've only just started getting some little dribs and drabs of the sort of green industry popping up in the region, but specifically mainly turbines and the likes of that.
Right.
But it means that we're still very, very underdeveloped in terms of economics. So we up here were scratching our heads when all these Londoners started turning up and were home counties. We were a bit like, wait, you're meant to be from London. You're meant to be from where it's wealthy and you're meant to have a good life down there. Why are you coming here to our land?
Well, actually,
how bad is it?
Apparently pretty bad, but I do know these off the top of my head, these statistics. The City of London, the square mile, has the highest SRB in the whole country, though, because it's extremely affluent. Well, in part, it's also because it's it's not minority white British, but it's approaching it, I think. It's damn near it, if it's not actually minority there now. But their SRB is 150, meaning 150 males born to 100 females. And the average is, again, 105. So it's 45 more per 100 in the city of London, which is, a very high percentage of Southeast Asian and Middle Eastern migrants there. Mostly Southeast Asian. But, and that again brings up the whole other issue that I've mentioned before, which is female feticide. And although it's technically, I read all of the, the different organizations' stances on this. It's technically illegal. So you can't go to a doctor and say, I want to abort my baby because she's a female. However, all of them also put in these strange little verbiage caveats that was, well, if it would cause some harm, essentially, then it's fine. So, of course, what ends up happening is they probably don't say that's why they want to have an abortion.
There's legalistic carve-outs that you can pick out if you're smart enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even think they have to be that smart. I think those people, the doctors probably cover for them in many cases.
Yeah,
and just
that wouldn't surprise us as well. You'll have a bit of both. I'd be curious to know what the SRB for the Northeast is. Ready? Is it by region or is it by specific locality?
So let me pull up my Excel spreadsheet here. Let's see.
No
Let's see.
I just asked purely because I know that the Northeast is, I think it's actually the highest rate of native births at this point in terms of native white British. It's us and Cornwall. Which, funny enough, you're going to the two further... In England, you go into the two farthest places away from London.
Yeah. The ones that I know are the lowest, which I can put this map up here if I've got it. Let me just find it real quick. Is that most of the ones that have the lowest SRBs are in Wales. And they're in the south, for the most part.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, right, but most of them are in Wales. The three lowest were the lowest ones were in Bolsover, Denbighshire, and Lewis. Those were the three that were, and they were not only under 100, they were under 90. So instead, meaning
really bad,
like 88 boys born per 100 girls. Yeah. And the scary part there, actually, is that those areas are also between 93 and 97% white British. So in, again, highly white British areas, I'm
actual hard times.
But yes, well, it certainly looks like it. Now, aging population plays a big role in that because, again, increased maternal age decreases the SRB, so there's that problem with it as well. However, which can't be discounted. However, that's extremely low. That again, that's also like Congo levels. 1950 Afghanistan levels. For it to be that low, something strange is going on. I've got a huge folder here with all these images, so I'm trying to find the right one that has the counties highlighted. That's deeply disconcerting. I only thought to look at the Olive Wolney because Callum had gone there in that video, and I thought, oh yeah, that was very interesting. So, but it wasn't just those. Those were the lowest. All right, let me see my Excel spreadsheet because I do have that by the this 2024 data? Yes, it was. It wasn't 2022. It was 2024 data. Is that in here?
So very recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And post Boris wave.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So this is by sex birth ratio. Yep. Okay. Make sure I've got this. Number of births, sex birth ratio, general fertility rate. There's a lot of graphs in here. One moment. Okay. Wait, all registration types. Which graph is it? Total fertility rate. So there's about 12 graphs in here just to make sure which one's which. Oh, here we go. Wait, all registration types. Where is the by county? One moment. Oh no, where is this? Oh yeah, by residence code, right? Does this have the... No, this one doesn't have it either. Which freaking graph was it on? Shoot, I do have this somewhere, but in terms of looking up the individual counties, because I was curious about that as well. And those are just the ones that I have off the top of my head, because I you know.
Could you find County Durham? as an example.
Yeah,
That'd
yeah,
probably be an
yeah.
easy one.
Let's see. Crude, all births, sex registration type, total TFR. This is because this is the wrong Excel spreadsheet. That would be why I couldn't find it in that one. Let's see. Oh, I think I saved it. Is this in it? Oh, sorry, this is extremely boring. I'm sure for people watching as I try to go through an Excel spreadsheet. That's, you know, that's riveting content.
It's no different from playing a game of Crusader Kings.
Well, the
Just
games
has a shiny graphic.
the games that I like also tend to oh, here we go. Number of live birth male. Yep, okay. And so what was it? Which one?
Durham would be an easy one.
Oh wait, is this
And it's
again?
still, I'm fairly certain that Durham's still quite ethnically
wait a
homogenous at
minute.
this point.
This is still the wrong. Sorry, this is I didn't think about this beforehand because that was still the wrong chart. Oh no, this is it. This is it because it wasn't 2022, right? This is it. This is the 2015 data because this was about. They actually collected these data for like spousal abuse research or something. It was not to study this, and they just happened to collect it. Here we go. This is the right one though.
What are the odds?
I know. TFR. Where is this? Should be it. Percentage. Total. Oh. Yes. Here we go. Here we go. But where is this? Is the total? Where's the one that has the area? This is still the wrong one. Yeah. Sorry about that. I would pull it up if I could, but now I'm not sure which one it is. And I'll try one
Maybe
more
post
time.
it after the stream.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, again, if in my video, I've got all the ones that I thought were birth summary tables 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's in there somewhere. Is this one up? No, I've still. Oh, because this is a whole other thing I was doing. Sorry about that. I'm gonna leave it though. Those are the ones that I know for a fact though. In terms of the areas and their SRBs. Oh, these were so the highest ones are City of London, South Hams, Malden, Greater Yarmouth, and Chichester. So those ones all have not just above 105, but above 120.
Greater Yarmouth's quite an interesting one.
Yeah, that one wasn't that. Yeah. I
think that's Rupert Lowe's.
It is Rupert Lowe's
parliamentary seat.
Yes, it is.
Which.
So
is quite interesting.
Which yeah, I thought was I clocked that when I came across it, but yeah, so those are the highest ones, and I've got the lowest ones, but I'm not sure where my exact Excel spreadsheet is. But it's government data from 2015, I think actually. Yes, because that's within the last time they conducted it. So yes, that was it.
Yeah, we probably won't get that post Frostwave. It's not for a while yet.
No, I don't think so. Well, but unfortunately, that's going to cause a major skew in it, of course, and you're going to see on pretty much every area, you're going to see a massive increase in SRB, which is going to look to anyone, a sociologist who would be looking at this stuff from an outside perspective, with a lower resolution lens, would go, oh, things must be pretty good, because look how high the sex ratio is. That's a sign of civilizational health and well-being. However, when
it's just going to make things. It's just going to make things funnier if there's a collapse, because it's going to go, what happened? Everything looked like it was going fine.
Right. By all of our BS metrics, it looked like it was great. And again, the numbers on the other thing that's interesting about this is that even though they say they don't do this, the female feticide and female infanticide, you can't lie in the numbers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know no one could see me.
You could lie in the numbers, but they wouldn't think to.
I guess that's the thing, right? Is they don't think to. But it's very hard to. There is no way to get an SRB of, say, normally of like 120.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. Anything above 107, 108 really starts to push the limits of the natural range of human SRB. Oh, here it is.
You're doing something weird if you get up there.
There we go. I found it. Let me share my Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, I finally did find it. So, wow, very, very exciting. Let me see. Window capture.
This is it, chat. We get to play some map games now.
I know, right? Excellent. So this is Here's the Excel spreadsheet. Very interesting. But I can go in and do a... Which one was it then? Because this is... I've already done the...
Go for County Durham, Northumberland, and Cumbria.
Okay.
They're the three northernmost counties in the UK.
Okay, so let me just...
Or at least the three rural northernmost counties in the UK.
It was Durham. What was the next one?
Durham, Northumberland.
There we go.
And Cumbria.
Okay. Whoops, that one. Sometimes they're listed a little bit strangely, but I'll just go ahead. This is right. So the male to female. This one is, well, this one's male skewed, but by how much? So let me just do the, I could do the calculation in, in Excel, but I'm gonna do it in calculator. It's just slightly easier for me because I forget how to do it quickly in Excel. And so that's 2, 2, 5, 1, and then 2, 2, 2. Sorry, let me just do this real quick. 2, because that looks positive. That's the first one definitely is male ratio skew. Oh no, it's not. Wait, right? No, it's not. This is no. There's more males being born here, so this is fine. I just put it in wrong. These are both positive SRBs, in that these are both skewing towards having more males than females, which is positive, which means that that's the proper direction, the valence of the ratio where you expect you expect more males than females. So the exact ratio though is 2 to, why did I just put it in wrong, that's why. So I don't do math live. So for County Durham it's 1084, and then for Northumbria it's 1202. 1154, and that one it's 104, so that one's actually lower. Yeah, that's lower than the average considerably, but the other one's quite high. And then what you would have to go in there and is look at County Durham and see what the white British population is, because for that to be 108, that's starting to, that's not crazy, but it's starting to push the natural range, whereas 1047 is also that's not also for Northumbria, that's not extreme, but it's starting to push on being a little dangerously low.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, these are, again, 2015 data. And all kinds of things can happen. Again, increasing maternal age can affect it. But once you start having, you have data like that to look at, and you can just immediately go, look up a region and say, I wonder what the relative conditions are there based on this odd metric. You can do that kind of stuff. Don't maybe run too crazy with it, because there are a lot of other factors, maternal age being, again, a major one. But increasing maternal age can also be a sign of bad things as well, because women don't feel like they have the resources capable of having children younger.
Yeah, that's it. And especially with the way that our society and civilization have been set up at this point to push women into work rather than into motherhood, where you spend your entire young years, your formative years in school, go on from school to university. That was certainly the line that was pushed, especially during the early 2000s. It was very, very hard pushed. You will all go to university. It's going to be great. You're going to waste 4 years of your life doing a pointless degree that you don't really need to go work in an office. And then that's your life. There you go. Congratulations. You have become a wage slave.
Yeah, fun. David English says County Durham's 98% white. That's very good news then for that county. It's by the SRB, that's, again, a very high upper range of normalcy for human SRB, which would indicate very good times there for some reason. Or, again, other factors perhaps, but, that's what, just from that one...
surprises.
For that one statistic, that's very positive then. And again, it's not outside of the range of normal human SRB. So it's not, it wouldn't be, if I didn't know, again, without the data, knowing that it's like 98%, I would think that's Southeast Asians doing a female feticide, doing a little female feticide, as they want to do. Because that's where it tends to be the case. And again, like places like County of London, or City of London, theirs is clearly so high because that's, yes, it's extremely affluent. Yeah. It's extremely affluent, yes. But they also are clearly... There's no way to get a number that high. The highest I ever saw it for a total areas, not for a specific parity, because for all other women, having more children increases the likelihood of having a daughter. It just keeps going up until eventually you get one. Usually there's a higher chance of having a male first. That is not the case for Southeast Asians. Southeast Asians, because the female feticide doesn't stop. So a lot of times for their parity 3 births, you won't find SRBs that are something like 110 or 115. You'll find them as high as 130, 140, meaning that at that point, essentially, they don't have a son. They are making one happen. Or at least that's what it seems to look like. Whereas for people who are not doing that, who are not artificially affecting the system, the biological system, then the likelihood of having a girl goes up. And a big part of that is also increasing maternal age. So as women get older, our likelihood of having a daughter increases.
Yeah, that's it. You can feel you can feel the finger of the people running the show on the scales here, and they're very much tipping things the way that they want them.
They are clearly doing that, despite, again, I understand that's extremely sensitive subject, and I tried to handle it with some decorum in the video as much as I could, but there's no way around it at some point, which is that that's a cultural practice that these people do, where they tend to have, I mean, that doesn't happen naturally, so they're clearly, putting their finger on the scale there. The other side of it...
Wait.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, again, not being culturally insensitive, but you literally had it as the Chinese government policy.
Right?
And there was no two ways around it. It was like, they made a one-child policy, and which, even without going down that line, as you just said, your first child is typically going to be a male. You're already have the finger on the scale there. You don't need to go down the line of, oh, well, this led to this led to that. It's like, no, you've put your finger on the scale and changed things biologically.
Yeah. And the other group that is a bit of a misnomer, going back to the chart I do have up, is that people from Africa. And this includes, American blacks. It doesn't really matter if they're directly from Africa, if they're from Jamaica and Cuba, or I guess other areas that have high levels of people who are African origin, right? For whatever reason, and I think it's that allele I brought up earlier, RS144, I think they have a very high prevalence of that. Again, they just discovered this, so I can't say this for sure. But in almost no matter what the conditions is that those people move to, their SRBs tend to be under 100, meaning that they always have more daughters. And then what do you see in a lot of African societies is female-oriented, more female-run households and local sort of the longhouse stuff, I guess, whatever you want to call it.
So what you're saying is Africans are genetically predisposed to build the longhouse?
Yes. I mean, it certainly looks like it. There would be nothing else other than a genetic factor that would explain that no matter how prosperous a place they move to, and no matter for how long, their SRBs remain so diminished, because it's in African Americans, it's in African people of African origin who are from the Caribbean. It's all African nations tend to have these very, very low SRBs. So that is something to also keep in mind when I said that Denbighshire, Lewis, and Bolsover have SRBs lower than the Congo and Afghanistan in 1950. As of 2015, they do. That's also taken into account that they have a genetic predisposition to have more daughters, and it's still lower.
So clearly,
right?
Yeah, clearly something is being done to make that happen.
Yeah, that's again why when I came across this, I kind of thought, oh God, like I have to tell everyone about this clearly. and I hope I don't get, I hope nothing happens to me, but it's been all right. That part. That's an interesting thing about it is the data's just sitting out there because no one would ever think to scrub this. No one would ever think that this data is sensitive and we shouldn't release this to people. No one thought about the implications of Trivers-Willard. apparently. It's some weird Maltese guys, like the only person studying it who writes Star Trek fan fiction. So yeah, of course not. Why would you anticipate anyone calling it out?
Yeah, it to some degree doesn't surprise me. I think that the people in charge of things aren't what they once were.
Yes.
And I think genetics has part to play in that, but yeah, I think that as I think as Scrump has said many a time, the decline is locked in,
Yeah.
and it feels like it at this point.
It does feel locked in. Yeah.
So you'd best all learn to love Dancing in the Rain, because oh boy, a storms are coming.
Because I don't know what you do to fix this. And I oftentimes the sort of cope is, oh, but we're not bringing in a bunch of men. We're bringing in a bunch of women who are, fleeing war, and we're helping these women who have nowhere else to go. It doesn't actually matter, does it? Because when they get here, they're going to do the exact same thing, which is that for those of them who are not African, because they don't seem to engage in a lot of female feticide either, except for in some countries where voodoo is practiced. Those.
Oh, I've seen a rise of that. The videos on X of people, Africans running around in London,
Yes.
out voodoo on each other. It's like, all
Yes.
right, oh, it's gotten to this, has it?
So the only time their SRBs, sometimes when they end up particularly high, it's because they are doing a different type of female feticide, in that they're doing it for voodoo reasons. And there was one country I looked at that had particularly high SRBs, that Eswatini, was it? I think.
Right.
Or maybe it was another one, now I can't recall. It was some African nation, though, where voodoo was the state religion, and they tended to have very high SRBs. And then, again, Muslims do this as well. And it particularly, any culture where you also find that there is particular culture importance placed on the first child being a son, or on having sons in general, well, the result is going to be that it's not just that they're
sons will be born.
Yeah, that they're randomly blessed with so many sons. It's that they are actively aborting or killing. Benin, Lugan, Mark II, thank you. Yes, you must have watched my video. You remember better than I did. Yeah, it was Benin is the one that there's just no way to get around it.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yes.
Yeah, Benin was. Ugh.
Yeah.
I can remember reading some of the journals that someone that first went into Benin, one of the first British explorers, went into the city of Benin, and just, oh boy, there's blood in the streets. Just like, oh, that's different.
Yeah, it is. It's strange to think about, because I never really had never really considered the extent to which these people come to Western countries and continue to do things that we would find barbaric, and then do it with modern medical technology to assist it.
But it doesn't surprise me at all. It does not surprise me at all, because I don't think we have it in our head that, at least the people that rule us have it in their heads, that technology is magical and it can just completely and utterly reshape and reform people into whatever they want them to be.
Yeah.
And that's just not how technology works.
Right.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I guess
people are going to misuse it all the time.
And I guess there's
I think my favorite.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say my favorite one is there's a term within engineering called, specifically if you're engineering things for the military, it's called squatty proofing.
Yeah.
Whereby you specifically design something. If you're making a button, you have to reinforce it to the point where a man, like, a full 6'2", 240-pound man, must be able to bray the ever-loving daylights out of this button, and for it to continue working in the heat of battle.
Right. Yeah. So you have to
and it's just
make it a little bit retard proof, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the perfect way to put it.
Well, squatty proof is a little bit more polite. Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a jawhead.
Right. I guess there's that expectation, though, that they'll assimilate right? They'll figure out, oh no, once they've come to this Western nation, things are so much better here. They won't have to do such savagery. No, it's a cultural thing. Why would they stop doing that inherently? Particularly if you have a married couple that come over, or a couple that are both from that culture and marry here. Why would they not continue to engage in their cultural practice just because the conditions have changed? They still practice their same religion, you know.
Exactly. It's like who was it? Did you see the news story about the tribe up in Scotland?
Oh, the Africans in Scotland, that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that.
They have moved to England and just continue. Wait, they've moved up to Scotland
Yeah,
and just continued being frickin' tribespeople. And it's like, yeah, well, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, right, I suppose. Although there was something weird with some of them where they weren't they some of them just regular
some of them
people?
I think a couple of them were regular people from America that basically, it feels a bit culty.
Right.
If you ask me,
So some sort of cult stuff going on there. It's just very strange that there's like an African tribe that is living according to African traditional tribal values in a traditional way in Scotland. That's strange.
Yeah. It was. I think they got removed the other day, and I just sat and laughed to myself, and I was like, yeah, I mean, they were going to have to remove them. The only decision they had to make was, do we remove them now when they're alive, or wait until winter's come?
That was. I'm so glad that was the actual question asked, because it was mine. It was like, well, because they showed pictures of them in the article I read where they're out, in the woods with no shoes and in robes on, essentially, like how they would dress in Africa, where there's no cold winters, and they're in Scotland. That seems like a recipe for great disaster. It's gonna get cold.
I mean, one of the things that you will have probably picked up on is vitamin D supplements that are suggested and advised by the UK government and NHS for everyone to take.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, they focus upon the black population of Britain.
Right.
And they do it because, you've gone from Africa to England.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no sun here. You're going to get ill. Your immune system isn't going to be as good as it would have been back in Africa because you just don't get the sunlight.
And that's well, that's a thing that affects the SRB. Is in Finland, and this is a study that went back through the Napoleonic Wars and looked at the SRBs of Finland, and found that a 1 degree in temperature shift. Wait, that wasn't that one. No, this one went back like 100 and some years too. There's about 50 to 100 studies in this video, so I'm getting them a little bit mixed up, but it's all in there. If you want to double check me, check the video or check my resources on that page. A 1 degree temperature, average decreased temperature in Celsius, was related to a 1% increase in the SRB. So in whites, but only in whites. Oh, this was actually one in Canada too, wasn't it? For blacks and for another group of non-whites, I can't remember which. Theirs went down. So it actually seems that colder winters increase the SRB for Europeans, for white Europeans, while that represents, again, bad conditions, poorer conditions for people who are from regions of the world that are very hot.
Yeah, especially if they're living outside of those
hot
regions.
Well, yeah, right. Particularly if you're living in the woods. I think that probably makes it much worse, because I think they probably would have died if they had just been allowed to stay out there all winter.
It absolutely would have died, because it's you're going down to you're going into snow. I think the other one that really throws them as well, especially when they come from toward the equator. Mm-hmm. The one that really, really shocks people, especially when they move really far north, is the sunlight.
Yeah.
As in the length of sunlight throughout a day.
Right. Yeah. Again, vitamin D supplements for that. Yeah. Vitamin
D supplements, but not only that, it completely and utterly fixes the circadian rhythm, because in Africa, sun comes up at 7 o'clock and goes down at 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
year round, all of the time. You start getting up into the north of England, and the sun can go down at 11 o'clock at night, like 11:30 at night, I think, the summer solstice.
Yes.
And then come back up at around about 4 o'clock the next day. So you get literally 4 hours of nighttime, and it's not even real nighttime. It kind of just touches onto twilight, and then comes back to day.
Yeah, and
again,
same in the winters in terms of the darkness.
You go You flip it in the winter, so you'll get like, maybe 6 or 7 hours of sunlight if you're lucky a day.
Yeah. Which
It's like, yeah, no, of course you're going to ruin these people's health.
yeah, how I never even considered, of course, because, replacement migration, and that's the whole point of it. Uh, but no consideration for those people's actual welfare or concern or health whatsoever. Because not only is that kind of must be miserable for them, but I think it's a question that has never been asked to these people is, would you, as a migrant, be willing to cause potentially permanent genetic alterations to your family lineage? Because the thing about this stuff is that those elevated SRBs, they don't decrease with the children of immigrants.
Yeah.
For children of immigrants in Canada, I specifically looked at it. There was a study on. It lasted for 4 generations. Asian immigrants to Canada had elevated SRBs that were which indicated the sex selection, aka female feticide, was probably still occurring as well. But it took till 4 generations for them to be about the same, but they were still higher than the average.
Yeah.
So it's not just one generation, and then the next ones they were born here, so they'll of course adopt the local population's culture. No, the sex selection is still occurring, and you have the effects of moving to a more prosperous place last for 4 generations. That's, over 100 years at that point of people you're talking about. So the long-term effects of this are things we can only try to fathom. One of the things I did was I tried to calculate the exact number of excess males with the most specific data source that I had, which was, or seemed to be most relevant. And I think a lot of attention gets placed on the boat migrants because it's obvious. It's a thing to really...
They're a tiny... They're a drop in the bucket.
Right, but it's like, look, we're going to do something and we're going to... Yes, digital ID will stop the boats, of course. Sure thing. But it gets focused on a lot because it's a very visible thing and they are illegals, etc. But it's, drop in the bucket.
It's the endless discussion and the endless...
Yes.
It's what they want to talk about.
Right. So I tried not to talk about that too much, but I did, however, calculate the predicted number of excess males that group would have. And it takes, by 10 years, you're talking about just from one cohort per year, we'll have something like 50 excess males. There's somewhere between 20 and 50 from just 1 year's cohorts of boat migrants. And by excess males, I mean, again, the ones that are over top, or well in excess above 105, meaning, again, we're talking males that do not have female counterparts in society for them. So less likely to be able to reproduce because of biological calculations, less likely to reproduce because there's not enough women, and less likely to be successful, and more likely to be criminals. So with the boat migrants, again, you're not just bringing in them, you're bringing in generations of them, and 4 generations it takes for this to normalize. So just from that one group...
That's going to collapse things. That's actually going to collapse things.
Yeah.
No, I
yeah, it does have that kind of effect of, I felt that way for most of the time looking into this, of, this is very bad. But even if... It's the same thing that the U.S. faces now. Most U.S. immigration problems come from South America. I have a pretty good hypothesis that South Americans also have the same gene, that RS144 gene that I mentioned, that causes them to overproduce females, because they tend to have a low SRB, not anywhere near as low as Africans, but they also, many of them have African admixture. That may be, their SRBs tend to be more closer to about 104 rather than 105, people from South America. So the U.S. doesn't have, and for the most part, being predominantly Christians, which, by the way, does not count people out of this, they engage in less female feticide than other groups. So the U.S.'s massive importation of people from South America may actually end up being less longitudinally harmful in that sense, only in terms of the sex ratio skewing, because they tend to have more daughters than they do sons. Well, relative to the average of 105. Still not a good thing, but in a sense, importing...
That's not good.
Right, yes, less not good. In a sense, though, importing those people is probably causing less harm as expediently as importing people from Southeast Asia and from the Muslim world. The SRB in the United Arab Emirates is, I believe, 203. Not 105, 203. That's for the whole country. So there's more than 2 males born for every female in the United Arab Emirates. That's not possible biologically, so that's obviously female feticide. But again, why would you expect people who move from countries like that to stop doing that when they're married to other people from those cultures? And that's a terrifying number of people. So yeah, I calculated it out, and within like just 5 years, you've got 12, and then within 10, you know, it's 25, etc. These kinds of increasing ratio or increasing numbers every year, and that's just from 1 year's worth of boat migrants. Within, 20, 30 years, you've got 50 to 100 people, excess males. That's not talking about all the children born, just the males that are predicted via all these statistical calculations to be unlikely to reproduce, and therefore more likely to do crime. So there's just no way around it. You've imported an army of men with nothing to do but crime.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it is brilliant, right? Excellent idea. What could go wrong with this?
I can see a couple of potentials there, but all of them are great, but...
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the answer is, because again, if it's like, well, they've lived here for, they were born here. That's people who were born here. To fix it. It's not gonna. Even that doesn't fix it, because of the cultural norms.
You'll have the argument of we should do the nice thing and let them stay. Oh, what do you mean? Everything has fallen over and it's over, and it's like, yeah, everything's fallen over and it's over. There's no more helping them. Every man for themselves. Good luck.
Yeah. It's a bit of a mess. I'm gonna hit some super chats here that I got real quick, and I also, Gary Thomas in the chat asked me, do you know what the SRB is for people in Oceania and East Asia? A really cool thing that you can do, that anyone can do, because these data are very easily available. Let me make sure I've got my window up. Right, this one? Oh, this one over here. Okay. If you go to ourworldanddata.com, or I think that's what it is, or .org, ourworldanddata.org, they have an interactive graph on here. Let me put this away. Wait. Which one is it? Whoops. Now I'm looking at I don't use OBS very often. My co-host does it because he's better at technology than I am. So I'm unused to it. Can I get rid of this then, please? Oop. One moment. There we go. Okay, here we go. This is our world in data. I've got it up on the stream, sorry, but what you can do in this, it's an interactive graph. So Oceania, I mean, in that case, New Zealand? I mean, I looked at the New Zealand SRB. It's about the average, yeah. Australia's, I covered it extensively in my video, but because Australia's is seemingly going up or mostly staying afloat, but the reason for that is because of mass migration to Australia from Southeast Asians. And there's no getting around it. There's no way to, otherwise, if you look at white Australian SRB, it is starting to decline. It looks like it's declining. It's not doing so great. It has declined over time, unquestionably, but I don't think it's yet representing a net drag. It's just because again, the range is fairly broad. It's between like 104 and 106 are well within the normal range there. With the UK, I was able to find it because it was starting to dip well below 104 in a lot of places. And so the total ends up skewing quite negative. And the only people who, again, have SRBs that low are Black Africans. And that's, again, because they've got not only this genetic factor working against them, but the cold and all kinds of other things that make it so they're not going to have a good time, essentially. Living here. It's just not built for it, essentially. But if you're interested, anyone in the chat, and just like checking these, you can also go in and do it by year. There's a map. You can see China really sticks out, as does Azerbaijan really sticks out. India's is pretty bad, but it has gotten somewhat better. It's an interesting thing about Pakistanis, since they tend to be often brought up in these kinds of immigration discussions. They have a very low SRB. In the graph I brought up earlier, I showed how it's theirs is amongst the lowest. So I went into that question wondering, excuse me,
Why?
get some allergy. Why are the Pakistani SRBs so low? Would you want to hazard a guess as to at least what my hypothesis was based on the very little available data to suppose why it is that Pakistanis in England and Wales have such low SRBs? Because it's a little consanguinity going on there. That does not help. Cousin
Yeah, I could
marriage,
imagine.
sibling marriage, that stuff, much like radiation, does not go well
Wait, no, no, no,
genetically.
no, 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 no. According to the NHS now, the new NHS
I know.
guidelines is there ain't nothing wrong with it. It's fine.
Didn't they have to release
Crack
like a
on.
statement somewhat apologizing for that or something? At least that's what I heard someone say the other day, but I didn't see. I saw their
I'm
announcement.
not sure that I've seen. Yeah, I'm not sure that I've seen any apology, but I have seen them quietly pushing it through Parliament, basically saying,
Right.
"Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with it. Carry on."
Actually, it built stronger bonds between people when you keep it in the family.
Yes,
Um,
yes, it definitely doesn't lead to things like birth defects and other problems that the Habsburgs, for example, ran into.
no, there's very little research on it because, well, it's considered unethical to study it, right? Isn't that very convenient, right?
Yeah, very, very convenient to say, "Oh no, we can't look into this."
But there
Important.
was research conducted in the 70s and the 80s, and in the areas and in India, not in Pakistan specifically, but in India, and in areas of India where it had higher levels of consanguinity, you found a lot lower SRBs. So, and it had
Yeah,
because of genetic fitness factors, the males are more mutated. It's even harder for them to survive because they're mutants. So
yeah. It doesn't surprise us. Now imagine it'd be the same for any offspring that was
Right,
fertile as well. They're
right.
gonna probably run into problems.
I would think so. I don't know how long you want to go with this. I'm going for about a half an hour. I can we can keep going, or I'm gonna read some super chats here. I just have a couple.
You can hit the super
I
chats.
hit the
Yeah.
super chats. Sape Rob for 5 says, appreciate you. Hey, thank you, man. Appreciate you. Sin for 10 says, a spreadsheet not even color coded. Aydin, sad emoji of the super chat is P colored. Back to serious talking now. I didn't even think about necessarily. I did have my folder up, but I didn't think like, oh, I should have that Excel spreadsheet ready to go. Clearly, Alexandru B for 25 Ron. I'm not sure what Ron is, but we do a video on the historical mass migration, like the PIE in Europe to India. PIE, Bantu migration towards interior, middle, and southern Africa. I covered a lot of immigration patterns in the video in general. I didn't cover those. But the obvious, like a really interesting natural experiment, of course, is Australia as a country, just as an idea, because there's basically nobody there with the exception of small tribes, and you then moved almost entirely men to that country.
Criminal men.
Criminal men. So there was a very interesting natural experiment that occurred in the establishment of Australia. And the most interesting thing, geez, excuse me, one second. Allergies.
It's funny the amount of people within the Australian government that are descendant from basically the jailers.
Oh, yeah. I think I coughed into the actual mic, but I muted myself on Discord. Very cool. Sorry about that, guys. It's just allergies. What they did find in my analysis of how that affected Australia is that a 1% increase, or excuse me, a decrease in the number of women in an area in the 1800s or late 1800s in Australia was related to like a nearly 1% or a significant increase in the amount of time that women spent on leisure activities today, and on a decrease in the number of hours worked by women in those areas. So women being more highly prized and prioritized 140 years ago, 150 years ago in Australia, when women were far rarer, leads to Australian women today who work less and relax more. That's why this whole thing was so crazy to me. Just like anything you could think of, you can kind of find, and that's why it's also terrifying when you start engaging in mass migration programs, is that it does last for hundreds of years in ways you may not even possibly think could be related.
The good old butterfly flapping its wings,
Yes.
and Eritrean falling off a boat in the Channel and somehow ended up in
Right.
England.
Yes, right. Uh, the last one here is from King Tesseract for 2 says, I think Funny Valentine won that Hispanic SBR. I'm not sure I understand what you mean there, man. Sorry. But Alexandra as well. If you go check the video, I have a lot of specific things like that. The what was the other one that was interesting? Oh, other natural experiments. So, for example, the Rwandan genocide, you could call a natural experiment. You could call the transatlantic slave trade a natural experiment, as it refers to total population sex ratios and what that does to a society. So, in African countries where there were far too few men, there were an excess of women, which is what we're seeing in, again, native white British population is skewing female, producing more. No, it's not an excess of females, not more girls than boys, but it's skewing that direction. In places that were 1% more affected by this transatlantic slave trade in the 1700s, today you find a country and a region that is more egalitarian, in which the wife makes more decisions in the home, in which the woman is more likely to work. And you also found these kinds of changes after World War I and World War II, because when there's an excess of women, society caters more towards women, or at least so it seems. And that's total population sex ratios. It can also though in those places today that were more affected by the slave trade, you also find decreases in fertility. So again, a very insane variable to think about, this one little thing that doesn't appear to who would ever think to look at it, and yet we really should, because of how many conclusions you can possibly draw from it, or at least using it again like a way of measuring a population's the population's health, like the temperature.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant. Sorry, again, I forgot we were supposed to talk about the other thing, or I got confused by this somehow, and I don't know how that happened. But is there anything that any questions you have, I guess, for me about it, or anything that you wanted to add? Because I think I've kind of exhausted my sort of explanation here. There's plenty more, but again, it's 2-hour video on it if anyone's curious about that.
Yeah. I'm gonna go away after this and finish watching that video.
Oh, don't worry about it.
I got about halfway. Wait, I think I was about maybe half an hour into it. Yeah, very interesting stuff.
But it's a lot of it's me reading numbers for 2 hours, so I thought maybe just having a discussion about it might. And I'm sorry that I've talked the vast majority of it, but yeah,
it's been good. It's been really good.
Yeah. Anything else that you had in mind to talk about particularly? Oh, how do we reverse this? It was asked in the chat.
Yeah, reversing this would be interesting, but I think reversing this is like, the question of how do we reverse this is downstream of how do we get in a position where we actually have the power to even think about starting to reverse this?
Right. I mean, you need to have the government would want to need to have the will to do it, and I don't think they have clearly any desire to. I mean, this is the replacement.
They have other plans.
This is the replacement migration paradigm that it's laid out directly by the UN. It's not even obfuscated, which is bizarre considering how angry people get when you say things like replacement migration. Well, I don't know, take it up with the UN. That's what they call it. So, not sure. But the other problem is that I don't know if the damage has already been done.
It can always be undone. It can be undone. It just requires an elite that has the will to do it.
I would agree with that. Yes.
But it's
if the elite wants to.
Where's that elite?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. If the elite wishes to, it can happen.
If the elite wants to. Yeah, if the elite wants to, and if the elite doesn't want to, is there another one willing to push them out of the way and say, "Well, I'm going to do it."
Right.
But I don't see either of those things on the horizon.
No, unlikely.
Yeah, but and this is the key. But as things go on, I think it might get to a point where the iron grip of power, the people currently running the system is going to fall apart, because you can't continue having an iron grip on power when you're going to be reliant on people beneath you functioning the way that You can't have the continuation of the managerial
Right.
state if this is their
The
plan.
system, it would,
It's not going
yes,
to work.
I mean, astonishingly, their best laid plans are going to be underlined by systems collapse because, as we were talking about before, people don't know how to maintain anything anymore.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things I found fascinating from a discussion that it was a African man that was having a discussion about language.
yes,
There's no word for maintenance in
no,
many African languages, so it doesn't happen.
right. And the language aspect
It's
of that is actually fascinating because I think that's actually a big part of it. That's the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. And what that one is that if a word doesn't exist in your language, the concept does not exist. It doesn't matter if you have a loan word for it even necessarily. If it doesn't exist in your language and there's no way to even get at it, as there's not in a lot of those African dialects, and there's just no word for maintaining something, well, then they don't have a concept of maintenance, so it doesn't happen.
That's mad because that goes beyond culture as incommunicable onto
right.
concepts
Yes.
incommunicable.
Yes.
That's that. Oh, that's
a
whole different kind of worm.
My favorite little bit of tidbit of information about Sapir-Whorf is that there's a tribe of people in the Amazon rainforest called the Piraha, and they only have something like 8 consonants, something in that vicinity, and like 4 vowels. So their language is extremely limited. And as a result of it, at least according to the work that people have done with them when they've gone and lived in situ with them and tried to study and understand them, when someone dies, they don't even have, they remember that the person was alive, but they just they don't have a word for death, so they don't understand death. The way they describe it is just they went off into the woods. They don't plant crops, they just eat they eat fruit and spit the seeds onto the ground. They think, well, that's how farming works essentially. So they have farms, but that's how there's no cause and effect that makes sense. When these missionaries came down on a little propeller plane with this not really a seaplane, but it lands in the Amazon river, so it's got those little pontoons on it. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
When they left, while they were there, the children of the tribe built a replica in some form of the plane, and then when they came back a couple months later, they found that the replica had been just thrown away. And when they asked them why, it's because when they didn't see the plane anymore, it didn't exist, and therefore the importance or significance of the replica made no sense.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's. It was like, why did we make this thing? We don't remember. That's the best guess about those people that I've heard about them. It's a very small tribe of people, so small sample size, but still.
It just sounds so innocent in its primalism, almost.
Right.
Just like almost as if like a tribe of toddlers. Meaning no offense to them. Clearly they're surviving.
They can be quite violent, to be fair. So like.
I can. Wait, so can toddlers.
Yeah. Well, true. True. So language does make it. That's a whole other thing on top of it is the language barrier stuff. But it's this biological. And the cultural practice of female feticide stuff that is you can't like assimilate yourself away from that, no matter to a certain extent that will continue in some portion of the migrant population. Even if they don't engage in the female feticide actively, because their conditions improve. I mean that's like the whole point of immigration, right?
Yeah, it's natural.
Then it just happens naturally. It's just the extent and extremity of the skewing that's affected by the female feticide. Now, the only ones, again, that you don't have to worry too much about overproducing males is Africans. And in America, you don't have to worry too much about South Americans doing it just because of genetic factors. And they don't have or they have this one particular gene that makes them less likely to have sons. But I don't think it's a great thing to rely upon for this. Well, let's import more Africans then. That's not my suggestion there.
Yeah. Very much hedging your bets if you're saying, oh, it shouldn't be too bad because of this one gene that may do this.
Right. Yeah. Not probably something to be worth making policy around. Let me get these last a couple of super chats, and it's been about 2 hours, or hour and 45 minutes. So yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me and talking about this. I would like to talk about the other subject, and I think I might start streaming here more frequently, guys, with just not on Broken Crown, for those of you who watch my podcast. So if you'd like to, some other weekend or some other time to talk about the that video, or perhaps next week, I would be good by me.
Yeah, that's fine with me. It'd be nice.
Oh, if you're interested in it, of course, but no need to make decisions yet. Sure, would be excellent. Dude McGuy Fans for 5 says, glad to see you doing a companion video. Yeah, man, it seemed like I really want people to watch this one more so than, like, I made this a 3-hour long documentary about a weird French doctor who was very involved in the COVID stuff a couple months ago. That no one was interested in that. I think for obvious reasons, no one wants to think about COVID, and there's reasons for that psychologically why they don't. But this one, I was like, the documentary about the weird French guy, I can understand the pass on that. But this one, I think people should actually look at. Buck Rockborn for five sent a hippo running emoji. Thank you, man. And then Gary Thomas for 5 asks, in your opinion, what countries are the best place right now, despite the global decline of developed countries? Via those data, the collective of data that I've looked at, you probably just shouldn't immigrate, if I'm being completely honest, because if you have an option, just don't immigrate. But what's the best place right now, despite global decline? Without Australia would seem very good, but the reason Australia's SRB is so high is because of the mass amount of foreign immigrants. There's probably, I don't know, like Liechtenstein, I'm sure, is quite simply that. Luxembourg, I'm sure those places are just like they are also in GDP and other sort of measures quite good, and extremely white European. They're probably doing all right. But I haven't looked into their SRBs. I focused on the Anglosphere nations as it just seemed to make the most logical sense.
Yeah. I think the answer for that one is better the devil you know. Stick to the area that you know.
Yeah.
Don't, if you're going out exploring somewhere, as what was the exact quote from Lord of the Rings when Bilbo walks out?
Oh,
Hold on. Stick to the roads.
Yes.
You never know where your feet will take you.
Right.
That kind of thing. It's like, yeah, if you start wandering around, you have uprooted yourself.
I mean, I'm a complete hypocrite. I'm an immigrant, so.
No. It's that's where I would say it gets a bit complicated, because obviously most Americans, or at least a good portion of Americans, such as yourself, have incredibly strong ties to England and to Britain. So in a way, it's almost feels like more of a coming home.
But that's how I've looked at it. But
new.
You know, that's a nice way to avoid being a hypocrit. But yeah.
but that's it.
It is different.
You're coming to the home nation.
Right. It is different in that sense, certainly, because I mean, again, genetically, almost all of my ancestors, except for a couple of Germans, are all from these islands. So.
Wait, even your Germans would probably, if you go far enough back.
Yeah, that too, right?
Yeah.
Eventually. So, and that is very different, and maybe why you see again the increase in SRB in Americans who move to England. I actually don't remember if those data were UK total or just England, but which I've used a lot of interchangeably. But go check out the video, because I used the very precise word there, because sometimes it was just England and Wales, and sometimes they included Scotland, and sometimes they included North Ireland, and sometimes they, you know what I mean, like depending on what they include. This is another problem with statistics. Lies and statistics. You have to be very careful about what gets lumped in where. A lot like white other is what I'm fairly sure the British government calls Muslims from the Arab-speaking world. It's white other. Don't know how much they would agree that they're white. Some of them certainly do, but I don't think others would.
You'd get gypsies in that group as well.
Yes, that as well.
Yeah.
So that can make it a bit, I think in that case, intentionally confusing. They literally categorize them as white. So you would never be able to detect those statistics now, would you? How curious.
The American government's always the most famous one for that.
Yes.
You know, I think I've seen a graphic before of what they consider white, and there's just no boundary basically between all of Europe and Northern Africa and the Middle East. And I'm like, yeah, these are all white, and it's like, are they?
Yeah, apparently, or so we are led to believe. But that is a whole additional confound in these variables, and I tried my best to be able to filter through and go like, no, I literally just like to find this I'm really just looking at the white people here. Excuse me. I'm being a little bit racist. Well, for the purpose of this project, that was of course the group I was most interested in, because I'm
Yeah,
talking about
naturally.
immigration to these countries,
Yeah.
and it's not, the end result is it's not looking good for the UK in particular, and I don't really know what the solution is outside of like total remigration, and but I at least hope that this information is of use and doesn't terrify anyone too much. Just another thing to keep in mind when, I guess, if you're discussing immigration or discussing the effects of this, it's not just GDP. These are
Yeah, I think
generational level
you shouldn't let
effects.
it. Yeah, absolutely. You shouldn't let it scare you too much. I
No.
think it's very, very, very obvious now. We're in the hard times, and as we have now scientifically laid out, the thing that follows the hard times is the hard men.
Yes, that's the one silver lining, and I would think, according to this, a lot of them have already been born, which is a terrible, you know, duty to place upon men and young men in particular to say, well, you're 15, time to save the West. That's not quite fair either. So
But it depends. It depends because you
yeah.
go high enough up, and you've got the likes of, especially when you go into the elite circles, you go to the kings of Europe,
Right.
and you did have like 15-year-old kings that went on to absolutely dominate in warfare.
I just never want to personally put any more additional weight and pressure on
It
young
shouldn't.
men,
Yeah.
because it's not like they have enough. So
They don't, as Scrump often says, politics is not for the masses.
right.
I'm of the opinion that politics is it's a bit like a sport. It's a blood sport.
Yes. Yes.
You will get people that will blindly blunder onto the field of play, not understanding any of the rules,
Yes.
and just get absolutely bulldozed.
Yes.
So just understand, don't get involved. Just sit back in the stands and watch.
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that part of it. Yes, get involved. You're also, we were both involved in the Pendragon Foundation stuff. I've tweeted out
Yes.
about it a little bit. You want to talk about that for a minute before we close at all?
The Pendragon Foundation. Yes, this is an excellent opportunity for anyone that is actually looking to get involved in something that will be productive. So not politics. Don't go near politics. Politics is bad. Awful. No one really wants to be involved in politics.
True.
But the Pendragon Foundation, you should absolutely look to get involved in, because our aim is specifically to bring forward the notion that castles are an important part of your English heritage. And as such, you should want to do something about protecting them and bringing them back to life a bit. Because right now, all they are really is just mostly used as a tourism
Yes.
destination, which kind of takes away from what it really should be. It should be a community hub.
Yes.
It should be something more. And that's the aim of the Pendragon Foundation. So I believe that I think there's a website for it.
Yes, I think so now.
If you can find the website, link it in the description. I know that there's going to be a magazine,
Yes.
which I think has been announced at this point again.
Nathan Hood is the
Brilliant.
person to follow on
Yes.
Twitter.
Go follow Nathan Hood, and go follow Pendragon Foundation on Twitter.
Yes.
And just keep your eyes peeled, because there's going to be quite a bit more stuff coming out where hopefully, like I say, we've got some big dreams. We're not quite at the point where, everything's going to just fall into a lap all of a sudden. We're just starting out, but it's now that we need people to come forward and try and help.
Yeah, and again, something that you can do locally. Obviously, if you live over here, a large part of my audience is American, so this part's not helpful. But there's all kind. Yiz is in the chat, and Yiz does a lot of local stuff with people, in the same sort of parts of the U.S. And there's getting involved locally is, of course, a great thing that you can do. That you can affect GDP. You can't really have any effect on what your country's politicians do in terms of immigration, but you can do something about this on local level. At least get involved and get to know people outside of the internet. So yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Yeah, getting involved at the local level is a lot different from trying to shift things at the top. You're never going to shift things at the top. They're a
Right.
million miles away, and everything is designed to be a million miles away from you. But you can go out to, you know, your sort of local community and just do something, give something back to them.
Yeah, yeah. Nick, I posted the link just now in the chat to Pendragon's Twitter, but I'll also put it here in the description now, so you can find that as well. Okay. Well, I think that was fun. I hope that it was interesting or whatever. Thank you for joining me. We'll do it again next week if you're down to do that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and it's nice to talk to you for more than like 5 minutes.
Yeah, nice to chat.
All right, thank you so much, man. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for stopping by, and bye-bye.
Cheers all. Bye.